Welcome to the Biblewheel video channel. In this study, I'm going to focus on uh, the two books, Joel and Judges, with the exception of a few cases. In this case, I'm comparing 1Samuel 7 with both Judges and Joel, because Judges is the seventh book of the first cycle, as you'll see, and Joel is the seventh book of the second cycle, or the 29th book overall, in the 66 books of the Bible. And I started this particular research by selecting the book of Joel, which is 3 chapters long, and searching out every word associated to the concordance number, and looking into other books and chapters related to 7. For example, Judges 7, the seventh book. And what I found is very interesting. It's very interesting. It's you'll find certain thematic links. You'll see. Okay, we know that when God created everything, He rested on the seventh day, and that day He sanctified it. And therefore, the seventh day could be associated to the seventh chapter of Samuel, whom Eleazar, the son of Abinadab, was sanctified to keep the ark of the Lord in Kirjat Jearim, in 1Samuel 7. And you'll notice Joel, the purpose of Joel is to teach people to fast, to pray, to seek the Lord. He says trouble is coming, and for that reason they have to fast and pray. And perhaps God will leave a blessing, or he promises that He will restore that which the grasshopper has eaten, and so on. Therefore, sanctify a fast is a common theme in Joel, but not well. Actually, the names, the words are mentioned. Sanctified and fasted are mentioned, but they're split up. I mean, sanctified has to do with Eleazar, whereas fasting, it was at that point when the Ark of the Covenant was in Kirjat Jearim. That's when Israel decided to repent and to fast to the point of fasting. And at the end, when the Philistines were attacking, Samuel cried unto the Lord, and the Lord heard him. The Lord heard him. That's interesting, because when Samuel was named, when he was born, he was named Samuel because the Lord heard his mother's cry. And in this case, the Lord heard Samuel. And skipping to Judges 20, Judges 20 was when the tribes of Israel were set against each other, and Benjamin, the tribe of Benjamin, had become pretty much Sodomites, and when the rest of the tribes heard what Benjamin did to one of the women, um, they decided they're going to um, wipe Benjamin out of their existence. But then they felt sorry for it. But in any case, it says, "Then all the children of Israel and all the people went up and came in unto the house of the Lord, and wept and sat there before the Lord, and fasted that day until even, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord." And from this point, or maybe from after the death of Samson, in my opinion, it seemed to me that God was pretty much silent. He didn't speak through prophets, but when they sought the Lord, they decided to fast, to hear from God. Because in the beginning, when God was sending prophets, they weren't fasting. And I think this was the first time in the Bible that the word fasting was mentioned. I mean, you don't find it in Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, nor Joshua. And it's in the book of Judges that it seems to be that fasting is mentioned. That's the first occurrence. And Joel mentions it 3 times. Sanctify ye a fast in chapter 1, and chapter 2 verses 12 and 15 it mentions fasting. And besides that, that's it. Let me go on to the next page. You'll find a lot of interesting things. There are pages which I made like with one highlighting color. It could be that through time I'm going to, if I find more links, I'll make it more compact, making several colors in one page. But this is concerning the sword, and Judges 1 is compared to Joel 3. Now the children of Judah had fought against Jerusalem, and had taken it and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. In verse 25, and when he shewed them the entrance into the city, they smote the city with the edge of the sword, but they let go the man and all his family. And in Joel 3, this Isaiah's words is reversed. What you find as the United Nations motto, by beating swords into plowshares, that was taken from Isaiah. But in Joel 3, it's the opposite, where they beat their plowshares into swords. There's another occurrence which I'll show you later, that this verse strongly relates to. Okay, now we're looking at Joel and Judges 1 once again, the second page, and this is both Judges 1 and Judges chapter 4. And the Lord was with Judah, and he drave out the inhabitants of the mountain, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley because they had chariots of iron. Whereas in chapter 4, that theme continues, and that it continues because that was one of the weaknesses of Israel when they turned from the Lord. He used that weakness against them, and Sisera was the captain of the Canaanites, that of the Jabin's army, and they had chariots of iron which could not be overcome by Israel, and because of that, they had in chapter 1 they had let them live as where they are. They didn't fight against them at that point, but in chapter 4 they had no choice but to fight against them. And I did a research concerning the name Sisera and found out it means battle array, but it is of uncertain derivation, meaning from which word did it come from. Joel does mention battle array, as you'll see in Joel chapters 2 verse 5, but Hebrew is different. Milkama Arak. Therefore, there's more to that. What happened was Sisera at the end, he left the chariot and he ran away with his own feet, and ran into a friend's house whose wife was Jael, and that friend was of the family of Moses' father-in-law. And it was Jael, the woman that was able to kill Sisera in a tricky way, like by giving him milk and making him go to sleep, and striking a peg through his head, a tent peg. Okay, let's go on to the next page. And now we're looking at Joel 2 along with Judges 2, 11, 14, 20, and 21 on one page. And this subject has to do with weeping and bewailing, in which the Hebrew is the same word. There's nothing much to say except to show you that how many times they actually wept when they repented, of course. They wept in Judges 2, and in Judges 11 it was Jephthah's daughter that bewailed her virginity. In Judges 14, Samson's wife wept before him. In Judges 20, it was Israel that wept before the Lord. Whereas in Judges 1 and 2, there was weeping. There was like a national repentance or weeping. And once again, in Judges 21, they wept sore. And we go back to Judges 2, where it says that in verse 10, and also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. And in Judges, in Joel 1, verse 3, it says, tell ye your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. And in Joel 2 verse 2, a day of darkness, of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. There has not been any ever the like, neither shall there be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. And chapter 3 verse 20, but Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. But I want to focus on Joel 1 verse 3, where it says, and tell their children another generation. And in this, that's where Israel failed in the book of Judges. And also all that generation were gathered unto their fathers, and there arose another generation after them, which knew not the Lord, nor yet the works which he had done for Israel. Why? Because nobody had told them. And we'll see in the coming chapters. Once again, we're looking at Joel in Judges 2. Whoops. Sorry about that. Okay. And the next theme is, these themes are going to come again and again. This page is, there's a mentioning of judges, and Jehoshaphat means God will judge, and the word plead in Hebrew is the same as shaphat, which is to judge, which I wrote here. Okay. The next theme is inhabitants of this land. Judges 2 verse 2, it says, and you shall make no leagues with the inhabitants of this land. You shall throw down their altars, but ye have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this? And hear this, ye old men, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Has this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers? And then sanctify ye a fast, and call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord your God, and cry unto the Lord. This is what they did in Judges 20, as you noticed in the passage before. And later on, blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. Once again, there's weeping. In this, actually, the previous page I showed everything all together, but in this case, it's all presented separately, so I'm going to skip this. Okay, the next thing is to sell. So selling and sold is mentioned in both Judges 4 and Joel 3. And the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he delivered them into the hands of the spoilers that spoiled them, and he sold them into the hands of their enemies round about, so that they could not any longer stand before their enemies. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold the girl for wine that they might drink. The children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your head. And I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabaeans, to a people far off, for the Lord has spoken it. So this shows what does it mean to sell. I'm gonna skip. Let's go on to the next. And once again, Judges 3 and Joel 3 do mention judging. So Judges 3, Joel 3 is the same. Jehoshaphat, the Lord will judge, but whereas in the book of Judges, almost in every chapter there's a mentioning of judging. So I'm going to go on to the next. And here we come to a more interesting theme. Blowing a trumpet is a very common theme in the book of Judges, especially when it comes to Gideon in Judges chapter 7, which is the 7th book, 7th chapter. But in Judges 3, it says, verse 27, and it came to pass when he, meaning Ehud, was come, that he blew a trumpet in the mountain of Ephraim, and the children of Israel went down with him from the mount, and he before them. And Joel 2, verse 1, as well as verse 15, do mention blow ye the trumpet, or blow the trumpet in Zion. And once again we return to the theme of generation, and this is what's in common. Joel 1 verse 3, tell ye your children of it, and let your children tell their children and their children another generation. And in contrast to that, in Judges 3 verse 2, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war, at least such as before knew nothing thereof. See, at that point, that was what they were lacking. Judges 2 is where they came short. But in Judges 3, just before Ehud, there was Othniel, and Othniel, I believe it was at this time that they actually taught Israel that they taught them war. And what did it say in Joel? Sorry, in Joel it said that they beat their plowshares into swords, and that's when Ehud, for example, he made a dagger. He in the Hebrew it says sword, but it seems to be a very small sword, which is a dagger. I think I'm going to cover that later on. So, in Joel 3, verse 9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty man, let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, and let the weak say, I am strong. And Judges 3 begins with, now these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the words of Canaan, only that the generations of the children of Israel might know to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof. And in verse 10, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. He judged Israel and went out to war. This is Othniel, Caleb's nephew, I believe. Went out to war, and the Lord delivered Cushan Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand, and his hand prevailed against Cushan Rishathaim. But later on, in verse 16, it mentions Ehud. But Ehud made him a dagger which had 2 edges of a cubit length, and he did gird it under his garment upon his right thigh, not his left thigh, because Ehud was a left-handed. And Ehud put forth his left hand, verse 21, and took the dagger from his right thigh and thrust it into his belly. And the belly of Eglon, that was the Moabite king, who was he was a fat man, he was a lusty man. That's what it says. And Haft also went in after the blade, and the fat closed upon the blade, so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the dirt came out. It is a generation that is at this point taught to fight. And let's go on. And this is another theme. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him. And Judges 3:10. This is referring to Othniel. In verse 10, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he judged Israel and went out to war. And in Judges 2, verses 28 and 29 is probably the famous passage that was quoted by Peter in Acts 2. Verse 28, and it came to pass afterward that and it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions, and also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my Spirit. So we go on to another page in Judges 3. And this page has to do with present and offering. And it turns out that the word present in Hebrew was mincha. And there is a difference in the drink offering. This mincha is actually a meat offering, and the drink offering is known as nesek, and in this case, in Judges 3, Ehud brought a present to Eglon, the king of Moab, And it turns out that the present in Hebrew is mincha, which is a meat offering. And in Joel 1 verse 9, the meat offering and the drink offering is cut off from the house of the Lord. The, the priests, the Lord's minister, mourn. Sorry. And in verse 13 it repeats, for the meat offering and the drink offering is withholden from the house of your God. In verse 14, who knoweth if he will return and repent and leave a blessing behind him, even a meat offering and a drink offering unto the Lord your God. Let's go on to the next page. Let me go back. It's strange though, because Ehud pretty much deceived the king Eglon by giving him a meat offering, by perhaps feeding to his own weakness, because he was a fat man, and on top of that, Ehud comes and gives him meat, saying, "Eat more," but at the same time, he stabbed him. Okay, let's go on to the next page. And we revisit the theme of selling, sold. And you'll find that throughout the book of Judges as well, that in every scenario, God sells them to another nation. Skipping that. And once again, in chapter 3, Judges chapter 3, I think I did mention this before, the Spirit of the Lord coming upon, and the pouring out of the Spirit. This was a repetition. Once again, in Judges 4, there's a mentioning of judge and judgment. You're gonna see some themes are gonna be repeated within every page, but I'm gonna skip that. So in Judges 4, it mentions sword again, just as Joel 3, they beat their plowshares into swords. So, and the Lord has comforted Sisera and all his chariots and all his host with the edge of the sword before Barak. And then later on, and all the host of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. Within the Song of Deborah, once again, chariots, mountains, battle array, Sisera is mentioned. It shows another link between these two books, and the Hebrew word for right is rakab, and the Hebrew word for chariot is rekeb. Okay, so yeah, that's because in verse 10 it does mention a ride, and verse 28 mentions chariots. It's related, in other words, to Joel 2 verse 5. Okay, let's go on to the next. And this, and here we begin Judges 6. This is my where I found this to be interesting. In Judges 6 and Judges 7, you find a lot of interesting things. And now you notice grasshoppers and locusts have the same word in Hebrew, but it is also derived by the word in